Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Kallum and Ciaran's post-theatre reflection. Now in living colour, if you're watching the video version of this podcast. If not, I'm going to edit this bit out. Hello, Ciaran.
I'm glad we've got a name now. I'm glad we have a name.
It's a pretty solid name.
It does what it says on the tin. It's functional. It's,
it's professional enough. It's just a long name. And also, I don't know how does it shorten down to letters? KCPTR.
Yeah, no one's gonna remember.
No one's gonna refer to it as this KCPR. No, PTR. It's just not gonna work.
It's like some sort of emergency procedure that you've got to perform when someone's passed out.
Or like a piece of equipment on a plane.
Which no one knows how to use.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to episode 1. And like the support we got on Twitter was nice. People.
Yeah.
I've had no feedback, so I'm assuming the show is perfect.
That's right, and that's the assumption that I'm hoping to go on. And we haven't been cancelled yet, which
no one's complained.
Good. We've had no complaints.
You know,
the Arts Council have not shut us down yet.
Well, the Arts Council can't shut us down. They don't fund things that aren't in person.
They don't fund anything apart from opera. Let's be fair.
We don't get funding for this show, but if you would like to fund us, please let us know. BP, listen, if you want to fund more theatre to like make your image good because all the oil, I will take your money. I will badmouth you repeatedly.
Are we gonna do a Patreon where we tell people what we really think?
Listen, it's on the table. It requires a lot of. Setting up a Patreon is actually really confusing, and takes a lot of paperwork. We could anyway. That's a discussion for off the podcast. You're listening to our production meeting once again. It's January, which means that last month was December, which means that we saw a bunch of Christmas shows.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about the different Christmas shows that we went. Today we saw one of the same and a few different. We're going to give our reflections on what we thought of them, and then we're going to kind of look ahead to what we're going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks. So shall we start with the review? I think
the reflection.
The reflection, not review. I think that's a word that we want to stay away from because
I specifically want to stay away from.
I'm not a professional critic. Kallum has a blog, which some of you might be aware of.
I wouldn't count myself. I wouldn't count myself as a reviewer, but I would say I'm a professional critic because I'm in the profession, and the one thing I explicitly do is criticise in order for hopefully to increase the quality of theatre overall.
We were talking earlier, like, how many shows did you see in 2023 in total?
14.
And how many of them would you say were good?
5.
Okay.
I saw... It was about 5 bad shows, 5 meh shows, and 5 good shows. I know I saw 14, but the math will figure out.
So if we're gonna start with the Sherman's festive offering, where does that sit on your order of merit?
Well, I think before we go any further, I should mention that 3 of these tickets were paid for by another company I can't mention.
Okay.
I'm working on a project which means that I was paid to go and see these shows. So, just to be open about the fact that I didn't pay to go and see Peter Pan at the Sherman, nor Hansel and Gretel, nor the Theatr Clwyd Panto. However, I did pay for all the travel by myself. So I spent more than I would have on the ticket to go and see these shows. This is important things to say when you talk about things you saw, about that kind of the politics of how much you spent on it. But I did spend a butt ton of money on getting to see them.
And public transport in Wales is terrible. So to undergo that journey was an undertaking in itself, I imagine.
I booked 2 days at a hotel. I booked the wrong days, so I had to book a third day.
Oh, no.
I ran out of money and then got kicked out of my house. So I lost a lot watching these shows. The things I've done for you, listeners. Okay, Peter Pan. We both saw Peter Pan at the Sherman.
And we had very different opinions.
We have very different opinions on this. So maybe it's a good idea for Ciaran to try and talk about why.
I think we should do point counterpoint. So I make a point why I enjoyed it, and you make a point why you didn't.
So we should probably talk about the show itself in details first.
Yeah.
I'm not just not paying attention on my phone. That's where my notes are. So we have Peter Pan that was directed by Lee Lyford and written by Catherine Dyson.
Lee Lyford, artistic director of Iolo.
Yes, this was a co-production between Theatr Sherman and Theatr Iolo. Won't bother listing off the whole cast because we'll probably talk about it within the review itself, the reflection itself. This is going to be an absolute trash fire. Car crash. Yeah. So, Ciaran, why don't you start talking about why you like this show?
It really moves, really, and sometimes you don't look at these things on an intellectual level. It's what hits you emotionally. And why it's affected you in a particular way. Just left there feeling, oh, that's made an impact for me without really analysing why. Look, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the relationship between Peter Pan and Wendy in this show, and I agree that in places it's problematic. And that the script, the pacing of it sometimes didn't quite work for me, but I thought there was some really... There were moments in it that it was certainly... This isn't a very good place to start, but it was better than the Brothers Grimm law.
I think it is interesting to look at it in context of the last two Sherman Christmas shows.
I think in terms of structure, it was much clearer than the Brothers Grimm.
Because the Sherman have done 3 Christmas shows that I've seen in the last couple of years. Christmas Carol, Brothers Grimm, and this. Now, one of my big criticisms of Carol was that it didn't know if it wanted to be a Christmas show or Panto.
Yeah.
Brothers Grimm had a similar issue, but it was probably a lot closer to knowing what it was. I don't think it connected with me at all.
But with Brothers Grimm, it also did that thing of, oh, there's no clear villain, and they do the thing of, oh, the villain isn't really a villain 3 times. And by the 3rd time, it gets really kind of oh, get to the point.
And then this definitely knew it wanted to be for the most part, apart from one scene, it knew what it was. It was a drama at Christmas that was family orientated, but was a proper play, I guess.
It's a play.
Yeah.
It's a written play.
With songs.
With songs, which should have had some character development in it.
It was an improvement in terms of style, in terms of knowing what it was. And I think for the most part, the direction's pretty good. Massive caveat being someone was real happy that they got the flying working in the Sherman, because there's about 10 minutes of it.
That's too much. I mean,
and you didn't need it. You could have just not done that, and it would have been fine.
no, I think you need it. I think you need the moment where they leave the bedroom and go to them. And then you're like,
other ways of doing it.
can do it. But you do not need to do it for 20 minutes.
I think we're overestimating, but it feels like 10 minutes. It does feel like 10 minutes. It's probably more like 5, but it feels like 10 minutes showing off the flying.
Yeah.
Did you see the preview of this, or did you see the show after it was previewed?
I went during the run, so not a preview.
So apparently 20 minutes got cut from the preview.
When did you see it?
I saw it the last day it was on.
Okay.
I saw the last show.
So I'm wondering what got
I would also love to know what got cut. I think the cast are really energetic, and for the most part, I was on board with it. Special shout out to my friend Ed, who was in the community cast. Sorry, was in the was the trainee actor on the show, apprentice actor. Sorry, great. Ed did a load of great little bits.
Yeah,
it was really enjoyable. I think that like Rebecca Hayes, Emily Burnett, and Owen Allen are doing a really good job with what they've been given.
I want to just discuss those individually in a bit more detail. I think Owen Allen, as think about his physical comedy performance, is really good in play. I think, that stuff with the language is interesting, but I don't think it was touched enough.
I want to talk about the good things before I start drilling into why I don't think this show works. Because I've got a lot to say about the function and working of Tink, and also like how the casting is interesting, but does it actually have any depth beyond its the casting is fascinating. If those elements around gender were in the script, but they're not.
Okay.
Right. So.
Let's can we go back to that? Let's talk about Emily Burnett as Wendy, and then go back to kind of the functions. Is that a good way of doing it? Jesus?
I think the good way of doing these, I've always found in my blog, is positive first. You butter them up, and then you criticize the entire function of their play. Okay, you go, I liked these bits, and everyone in it was really good and really great. And then you go, right, so now we're going to talk about how this script fundamentally doesn't work.
What did you think of Kieran Self?
Kieran Self was entertaining. He's always like a highlight of these shows. I think the comedy, the one thing I will say that for the script is there's quite a few good gags. Not everything lands, but there are some really clever little funny jokes. And I think the cast have a really good delivery of those kind of comedic moments. I think Kieran does a really good job of multi-rolling the various characters he's playing. His Smee, his lost boy, the father, they're really
different from each other. I think that's the problem sometimes I have with multi-rolling. In general, is they don't make it clear enough when the multi-rolling is occurring, but with this it was really clear who the individual character was, and they had individual characterization. Because I think multi-rolling could be confusing for a young audience, wouldn't you? Would you say that?
No.
No?
I think they get it. I think they understand the fact that it's a show. I think this will come up in Hansel and Gretel, but like I think kids just get it.
Okay.
And they go with it.
That's interesting.
And yeah, they can see it's the same actor, but if the costume's different, they're there to have fun. Like, we don't need to think about it. I think it's adults who struggle with multi-rolling because they're rubbish and their brains don't work anymore.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, that's all right. Linman Have Roberts was great in the role of that one lost boy. According to the website, Nibs is the name of that character. It's interesting that there was 2 people or 3 people who do lots of multi-rolling, and then everyone else is really consistent. Which I don't know. Again, I have thoughts about the way this show has interesting casting, but actually in execution is really rubbish. For me, I don't think Kevin McTosh, Peter Mooney, or Alex Murdoch worked. I think they were all doing a great job. I just don't know if their placement in the show made sense to me.
I didn't really believe the casting of Peter Mooney. What was the name of the actor who played Michael?
Kevin McTosh, I think is how it's pronounced.
They felt too old.
Yeah,
I didn't know where to place.
I think
them into.
If they'd multi-rolled more characters, it makes sense. But because they don't, I was like, I don't understand why this casting's been made. If it was about the flying and the functionality of the flying, there are questions about those characters even existing in the play, because they're basically sidelined to a point where they have nothing to play with. Like,
I mean,
Michael and John do not exist in the plot of this show. They
don't have any objectives.
There's
no reason for them to be there. I guess you could say that they're one of Wendy's obstacles.
Because she just passes them aside. She just leaves them, and that's there's this whole bit where they talk about they're forgetting home, but because they're not really in it, you could do the same bit with just Wendy, because they actually do that where Wendy. Okay, so I would say that I really liked Alex Murdoch as Mrs. Darling, but I didn't believe Huck functioned, and I think that's a script thing rather than an acting performance. The script with Huck, and we'll get onto it in a minute, is just not working. So I think the cast are all entertaining. We've got some questions around some of the casting and how, and I'll get onto that after we talk about the plot. For the most part, what this play attempts to do, this is a really disorganized conversation, what this plot attempts to do is examine the ideas of gender and family through Neverland. So the play is focused in and around Wendy. The Darlings are splitting up, and their marriage is coming to an end, and all of these anxieties and feelings are then what Wendy is going through and has anxieties about, with the family falling apart and having to grow up when being a 12-year-old. It kind of the focus of the narrative, and her role as a young woman or a young girl is really what the plot attempts to examine. However,
is it the idea as well that young women have to grow up maybe a bit quicker than what?
I don't know. I think that's not examined.
There's a hint of an idea that we place more adult responsibility on young girls. But you say, they could have gone into it more.
I think they suggest that all women, their goal is to be mothers. That's society's function for them, is to become mothers. That's what's in it. That's what's there. Because the whole piece, as soon as she arrives in Neverland, is that she's assigned the role of mother and experiences the same disconnect that she perceives her mother of having. Unfortunately, none of this is examined or actually goes anywhere interesting. Hook, for example, is presented as either Mrs. Darling's internalized belief about adulthood and motherhood, or Wendy's projected beliefs of what her mother thinks about adulthood and motherhood. However, the two characters have no connection. Wendy does not have a connection to Hook. Hook is focused on Peter Pan, which I guess is like a metaphor for like a despising of childhood or like being children. But
Yeah.
functionally, if that metaphor works, you need to have interactions between Wendy confronting those ideas in a more literal sense, because she goes through all these experiences, but like none of it functions to a point where she questions it or surpasses it. The play has these moments where it's like, oh, is Wendy going to finally reject the role of mother and like get to be what she wants? No, the play
she
never does that.
does.
In fact, the play ends with her being a mother. It's mad. It's absolutely insane that there's 2 hours dedicated to Wendy's experience of gender and her journey in a production of Peter Pan, which already is kind of a trans icon. Like it's one of those stories that
Right.
has a lot of trans kind of connection. I know a lot of particularly one friend, trans friend, who's obsessed with the story of Peter Pan and exploring it through that lens.
Do I know
No, you don't
that?
know.
Okay.
But it and we have a non-binary actor in the role of Peter Pan, but this is never used to any extent.
When I saw the casting, I thought, oh, this could be really exciting. What are they going to do with it? How are they going to explore that Pan and Wendy relationship? But that, like, as you know, I'm a bit wary of talking about this
There was
cis
no
man, but
there was no connection between the casting and the text, because Peter Pan's role in it is to be basically the patriarchy by function, or at least misogyny, or like toxic relationships. Peter Pan represents all these things, which makes the reflection of him at the end, where he comes to collect Wendy's child, really weird, because for the whole play we've seen Peter Pan be awful and never learn his lesson.
But for Peter Pan, he's a learned behaviour. That's right. Peter Pan is a boy who never grew up. Where am I going with this? So these are behaviours that he has seen other adults perpetrate. And then Peter Pan thinks this is the way you should treat people, and it's never been taught any. Is this a valid point, Cal?
I think you're right. I just don't think the play does anything with that other than have him do those things and then not change.
And not call them out.
The only change is, well, I guess the moment the play thinks that Peter changes is when Tink sacrifices themselves and then Peter's like, no, I need you back. But then continues to friend zone Tinkerbell. I think Alan is doing something really interesting with Tink, but like the casting of a masked actor in a beard with a beard playing a clearly female identifying Tink is again interesting to look at and observe as casting.
Yeah.
But the actual narrative doesn't explore it. I don't know about when you saw it, but the first time that Tink appears, the audience burst out laughing. And that feels like that doesn't work for me. That's no, I don't actually think this is a comedy beat.
Point.
This isn't a comedy beat. This is just who Tink is. Now that might be on the audience, or it might be on the way the show presents Tink. I don't know. But then Tink is like...
That's a good point. The reaction wasn't the same on the night that I saw it.
And I
But
think,
I didn't question it, but I can see absolutely why you're doing so now.
yeah, and I think like Tink's function in the plot is like maybe for 3 scenes of purpose where she acts jealous of Wendy, dies, and comes back to life. That's her function within the play. Like that's
Yeah.
it. Um, so that doesn't work. Like you could cut Tink from the show and nothing changes. You could cut John and Michael from the show, nothing changes.
So is this a thing where they've said, "Oh, we've got the source material, we've got these characters in the source material of Peter Pan, and if the audience comes and these characters are not there,
So why do they
they're
change
going to
Tigerling?
question." Yeah,
No, if they're changing things, what they do a lot,
yeah.
you should just focus down on what your narrative is and explore it in detail. And if that means cutting characters that don't serve any purpose because you're focusing so much on Wendy's journey and then not doing it right, you've got a lot. Like, you could just cut so much stuff. The fact that 20 minutes got cut and I still feel like you could cut more, it's mad. It's absolutely mad. I think it's...
And the fact that Captain Hook goes missing for large
Captain
parts
Hook
of
just
the
goes
second
missing
half.
for large portions of the plot. Captain Hook
Yeah.
finds an asleep Peter Pan and doesn't just kill him. like in an earlier scene, we've seen that Peter Pan will just go dead. Just kills a person live on stage. And then later, finds Peter Pan and is like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to poison his drink. He's right there! Hook him!
Have him! Kill him! No.
Kill him! But here's my wild pitch, and this is getting into things. Maybe they should have killed Peter Pan.
It's a show for children.
No.
So.
I think you can kill Peter Pan and have Peter come back. I think functionally within the plot, what they should have done is killed Peter Pan and have Wendy reject the role of mother and become the new Peter Pan. And then some random kid called Peter shows up at the Lost Boys.
I think in terms of roles, that would be really interesting. I don't know if you need to kill Peter Pan.
No, you need to kill Peter Pan. Either metaphorically or literally.
You can kill him metaphorically, yes, but how is stabbing Peter Pan to death going to appeal to them?
Well, then you just replace the Tink scene with Peter Pan coming back to life with the power of magic, because we have a connection to that character.
But is he going to learn anything?
Yes, because now he's not Peter Pan. He's a little kid called Peter who can learn to see, via Wendy taking the leadership role, the mistakes in his in what he was doing. Because that's the other thing that the play examines, is that Peter doesn't actually do any fighting. He just talks about it. And that could make the tiger character, who is like acts as like a mentor to Wendy about escaping the gender norms.
Yeah.
Rather than acting as, oh, I'm having an affair with Tiger. It's rubbish. I'm sorry. The script for this play is not good. I enjoyed Act 1, but I felt like something was off. And then as I continued to watch Act 2, I grew more and more despaired at the direction this play was going and how it wasn't exploring its gender roles or its interesting casting or like giving a character any development despite jettisoning half the cast to focus on 3 characters. And it somehow doesn't give anyone satisfying character development over 2 hours. This play just collapses in on itself. And I think that everyone's doing a really good job making it entertaining, but there's only so much you can do to cover over a faulty wall. No matter how nice the wallpaper is, if the wall is falling apart, the wall's still gonna fall apart.
For you, is it a 1 more draft job?
It's a 3 more draft.
Is it like burn the house down and start again?
There's conceptually some really interesting ideas going on here that you could explore in a better script, but I need so much being changed. So much needs to be drafted into this script. And I apologise for the words I'm using when describing this. I just can't express how disappointing its explorations of gender is without just going, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Hook doesn't work as a villain. Like,
I completely agree with you on that one. Hook goes missing for Hook is never an existential threat.
Has very little actual direct confrontation between the characters. It's just an existential threat that doesn't really matter.
Actually, do we care if Peter Pan lives or dies by the end of it?
No, this is what I'm saying.
No,
this is why we should kill Peter Pan.
We care about Wendy. I cared about Wendy and Wendy's journey.
I care about Wendy.
I just saw Peter Pan as a bitter dick.
Yeah, which is why we should kill him. And why Wendy should. I was engaged with Wendy and cared about Wendy being able to reject the role of mother and do what she wanted, and seeing that like there is more to being a woman than just motherhood. But she doesn't do that. The play explicitly fails to do that.
Oh.
It fails. It fails to let her be anything other than mother. She gets one fight, and it is instantly back to being a mother again.
And I think, what do I say? What can I say that hasn't already been?
I know that you said this was your favourite show of the year, but I'm here to tell you, Ciaran, you're wrong.
I saw some shit last year.
I'm here to tell you, you were wrong, and that something on your list was better than this. What I'm saying is, better luck next time, the Sherman. What have you got next? Let me check their website.
We cursed it, didn't we?
We cursed it. They're bringing back Christmas Carol. I'll be back for you. A year from now.
I don't think I'll bother. I
can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait. I'm sorry to be the villain, but I cannot wait. It's gonna be so much fun to tear at a new one.
Please never do that Scottish accent again, because you cannot get away with it.
It is actively one of the worst productions of Christmas Carol I've ever seen. So
it's so bad.
I think it's interesting that 3 years in a row, 4 now, the Sherman have done a Christmas show with a focus on feminism that fails to engage with a positive feminist message that actually goes anywhere or isn't really, really redundant. Because I would argue that, like, Brothers Grimm last year had a stronger message that sort of worked and didn't reduce the character to mother, but...
Yeah, the message of Brothers Grimm is stronger, but still it didn't quite carry through.
It didn't land for lots of...
Yeah, I feel like there are intentions that the writers start with on these shows. But then it's almost like, oh, it has to be a Christmas show. The audience expects something, so the vision has to be warped to fit the expectations.
Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
Is that a theory that might work? I don't know.
I've no idea. I've no idea if that's what's going on or not. But anyway,
shall we move on?
Yeah, Peter Pan was rubbish, but everyone did a good job. That's my closing statement.
You also went to see the under-7 show Hansel and Gretel. Did you see it in English or Welsh?
I saw it in Welsh. So I saw the adaptation by Brennan Davis.
Right.
It's written by Katie Ellen Salt. It's Hansel and Gretel. It's, you know, the show for younger kids in the studio space rather than the main theatre. I saw last year's show, Goldilocks. Now, from what I understand, Goldilocks didn't go down particularly well. I really enjoyed it. So, I don't know what's going on there. I thought it was fine. I was really engaged with Goldilocks. I thought it was a really interesting way of expressing that message, and I really connected with it.
You didn't have any major problems with it. You just didn't think it was particularly special.
I had a real good time.
Yeah.
So this year, rather than being the audience was sat front on, the audience was in the round, which personally I didn't think benefited this show too much, but from what I hear, it's better for the audience of young kids. I can't tell. I may need to do more research into this. So Hansel and Gretel, really solid little show. It's a really simple message. It's got some great actor muso stuff in there. The songs are quite nice. I think some of the translation on the songs doesn't quite land. I've spoken to Bramwin about this, that like some of the lines don't quite translate over. The cast are doing a really fun job. So like Ellen Phillips as Gretel, James Ivan as Hansel, and Marie Fleur, who multi-roles a bunch of really different roles.
Right.
Highlight of the show. Absolutely goes for it with each of those multi-roles and is really enjoyable. There's a great sequence at the end where she has to play every character, so runs round changing costume, and the kids get behind it because they can see that like this actor's having to put a lot of work in to run round and do the whole thing.
That sounds really fun.
And it's really fun and nice, and like the tree costume is like an actual tree they have to get into. It's great. It's a story about siblings learning to work together, and it's about like being able to ask for help because we can't do everything by ourselves. And for most part, I think it's really solid in that messaging. Where I think it doesn't quite land is in the confrontation with the witch. They have this really interesting conversation about the witch's feelings and what that's made her do. But they have this conversation and like emotional resolution while the witch is being burnt alive. Which I think mixes the message a little bit.
So, let me try and get this in my head. So the witch is burning alive, and they're like, how do you feel?
And they're like, you just need to ask for help. And like, talking about her feelings. and like, yeah, the reason she needs help is because you've locked her in the oven and are burning her alive.
If Hansel and Gretel take her out the oven at that point, and then they have a conversation.
If she just never enters the oven, maybe. And also, like, I think it would benefit the story and the story they're telling if all the things they've heard about the witch aren't true. Because the thing they hear is that like she turns people into cookies, and it's not like that's not what she's been doing. She explicitly puts she explicitly puts Gretel in the oven to turn her into a cookie.
Yeah. I mean, from what I know about, if we think about witchcraft in like the people who were perceived as being witches in history, who obviously weren't because there's no such thing.
I think
it was.
I don't know about that. I know a couple of witches. I think.
Oh, do you?
I think it's more that emotionally and for the message of the story, she can be a witch. It's just that the rumours around her being evil don't connect with the story they're telling. Because the story they're telling is that like the thing that she's doing to the forest comes from grief and depression, and that like she needed to learn how to reach out, which I think is a real oversimplification. But for a kid's narrative, it works.
Okay.
I think the messaging gets a bit mixed up when you have the whole furnace thing going on. Because they're like, ask for help. And then the witch is struggling to ask for help. And explicitly the reason that she's asking for help is because they've locked her in the oven. And she can't get out.
What interested me, like I didn't see this, but I saw the running time was 45 minutes. were they able to effectively tell that story in
Yeah,
Porthcawl?
outside of the weird
That's
messaging,
really
it
good.
was pretty solid runtime. It felt pretty about the right length. I think the kids were just on just before the edge of being like uninterested. They were engaged the whole way through.
That's good.
I also want to compliment Kerry James's lighting design. Is really good in this show. I know it toured, which is interesting. I didn't see it on tour. I saw it in the Sherman, but in the Sherman, the lighting was really good. I don't know how well that translates to like elsewhere. And the production design. Who was on production design? Haley Grindle. There's lots of really nice little tricks. There's a great sequence where they're in a storm and they're trying to get towards the house, the witch's house, and there's all these little pop-up houses, all these little houses that change in size. So like as they go through the storm, there's a bigger house and a bigger house and a bigger house. It was really solid. I really enjoyed it. The costuming was some really great, clever costuming bits. There's a bit where they get stuck in treacle. They get stuck in a treacle river, and what they do is they pull treacle out of their socks. It's like fabric, but like it's really effective little trick. It's all like really clever, low budget, really nice design choices that I really appreciated about the show. The craftsmanship in every little aspect. Yeah, really, really good. I'm looking forward to watching next year's Under 7 show. It's Little Red Riding Hood. Alice Eklund, who is the assistant director on this one, is directing it, and Katie Allen Salt is writing again. So maybe, I'm excited to see where they go with the, if there's any like improvements over some of the things I had issues with this time, but like, and how they choose to stage it. For me, I think some of the in and around stuff was really effective, but a lot of it was like anchor points where the actors were kind of stuck in the four corners, and I found that like you're kind of wasting the space in the middle. They use it effectively sometimes, but I was like, these anchor points are really, and maybe it's not noticeable for kids. Maybe that's a Kallum thing, but I was like, these anchor points aren't working for me.
That's not something that I would pick up on. That is interesting. In terms of the...
I did a study for 10 years in a direction. If you'd like to hire me as a director, please email me.
Did you go to the relaxed performance of this? Or
No.
did you go to a normal?
Went to a normal
like,
one.
Were there things that could have been overwhelming before we going to?
No, I think actually it was a real calming show. The music, like some of them, I really liked the music. Actually, I should have said this. The songs all had a bit of diversity to them, in that like they were acto muso songs, so everything was played live. It was nice, but like the use of instruments was there was like a little bit of variety. There was like, I think it was a banjo rather than the guitar. There was like there was one that was a drum. But it was like a piece of it was like a, I don't think it's actually a drum. I think it was a piece of material that they hit like a drum. That was really good. I really like that song.
I saw a photo of James Evan playing the ukulele.
Yeah, ukulele. And then I think there's like a saxophone. It was great. I think there's very little you could do to that show to make it more relaxed. I think taking out some of the lighting choices, and it's difficult to play quieter. But we'll get on to this later, because I do have a thing about a relaxed show that I saw later on. But yeah, Hansel and Gretel was great. Once again, I enjoyed this show. I enjoy going to watch all kinds of theatre. So I will go and watch Under 7's show. I really want to go and watch Soon from Theatr Clwyd, Theatr Kenneth Layfall.
I missed that.
I didn't get to, the only day it was up north that I could go to see it, sold out. And I didn't use my connections to get tickets. So I missed it.
Always use your connections.
Always use your connections, gang. This is what we've learned.
That's what they're for. But shall we compare the Cinderellas that we saw?
Yeah, well, I've talked for a bit. Do you want to talk about Cinderella that you went to see? And then I can talk lyrically about the best show I saw all year.
Yeah, okay. So I went to see Cinderella at the Swansea Grand Theatre. So this it's weird saying, so the shows we've talked about so far, they're kind of in-house productions, they're kind of written in-house with, Welsh-based cast. This Swansea Grand Pantomime is more of a commercial, traditional pantomime. I don't think that um should mean that it's of any worse quality. It's just a different kind of style of
So
show.
it wasn't a Swansea Grand production.
So, no, because the Swansea Grand are not a producing house. So there's a company called Imagine Pantomime, who write and produce pantomime for theatres all around the UK. So there's Swansea, Birmingham, Nottingham, a couple in London. And then the script will have kind of some changes depending on the version of where they are. So local references to like the Mumbles or Swansea City Football Club or stuff like that. But it's a script which was also used in other locations in the UK with changes to fit those kind of regionalistic characteristics. But that sometimes makes it feel a bit generic. And I think that maybe that's the problem with these. I don't want to say mass produced, but these
No, they are absolutely
panto.
mass-produced
Yeah,
pantos.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
factory order panto.
Written to spec. They've got to hit these beats, but stuff a bit of local stuff in there so that the audience
Insert
feels
your
that
football
they're.
team here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad to be in Barnsley. Yeah, it felt a bit like that point. Um, but it's a traditional panto. So, but it's really nice that they've had similar people come back year after year, so the audience gets to know the cast. Kev Johns has been in the pantomime game at Swansea Grand for the last 20 years. I think he's only missed 1 year, and Kev has recently been given the all clear from cancer, which is really good news. I didn't really expect to see him performing in another Swansea Grand Theatr Panto, and he's beloved in Swansea, so it was great to see him back on stage as
Have you seen some of the
Dame
previous
Jolly.
pantos at the Grand?
Yeah,
Is this like your
and
local theatre growing up?
yeah, it was kind of where I went as a child. It was because it's closer to Porthcawl than Cardiff. It's where I would have gone to see pantomime as a child. So I've kind of grown up with Kevin John as Dame. It was the first pantomime I saw. I used to get really intense sensory overload going to pantomime, which I kind of grew out which meant I found them really challenging when I was really little. But when I was a teenager, I started to be able to cope with them a bit more. Um, but yeah, so I went to the Swansea Grand pantomime with the Swansea City Football Club Disabled Supporters Association. It was really nice group of us who went. And Kev Jones got really nice rapport with us as a group of disabled supporters. I'm going to talk about Kev first. It's really nice set pieces, but it's the set pieces that you would expect with him and Matt Edwards. Matt Edwards was on Britain's Got Talent 3 years ago, played Buttons. Um, their comic timing and the interactions between them are just really well crafted, and you can tell that they've been working together for a number of years now. You can tell that they built up this comic relationship which really worked. And there were some things that went wrong during pantomime, which they kind of covered really well. They ad-libbing, they really bounced off each other really nicely. I think what this direction did, which I found really interesting, normally the Ugly Sisters are cast as the Dame characters in Cinderella pantomime. But the ugly sisters weren't ugly in this. They're in physical appearance. So, the sisters in this were played by female identifying actor. And they're not ugly in the sense of their appearance, but they're ugly in the sense of they're very self-absorbed. They're kind of portrayed as these kind of social media obsessives who only care about their external images. And in the early part of the play, we get a sense of threat that, oh, they're really going to hamper Cinderella in terms of her wanting to go to the ball and meet Prince Charming. But as we get into the second act, they kind of disappear, and their threat as characters vanishes. And unfortunately, they become kind of more comic characters in the second half, and we don't sense that there's that much of a threat to Cinderella getting to the ball and getting what she wants. I think that's a trope in a lot of pantomimes I've seen where the threat of the antagonist weakens into the second half, and the second half is a lot slower in terms of pace. We have AJ Pritchard and Curtis Pritchard as the Prince and Dandini. They do a thing in this where the Prince and Dandini kind of switch roles. The Prince says to Dandini, right, you're gonna disguise yourself as the Prince William's clothes. You're gonna go into town and meet Cinderella. Would you like get an hour? Because but it got confused. It got confused in terms of who was who because AJ and Curtis Pritchard are identical twins. So swapping identities is a good idea, but do you see the flow in this?
I'm questioning why a mistaken identity plot is in Cinderella, but sure.
It just didn't need it.
Yeah.
It was just an extra thing of like, oh, we've got identical twins in this, so we could do this.
Yeah.
But it was an extra bit of plot that wasn't needed.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you could do that. It's not an outlandish or unreasonable thing to do, but do you really need it? And the answer is no. What I will say about AJ and Curtis Pritchard, though, is that the show makes excellent use of their dance background, both being professional dancers on Strictly Come Dancing and Dancing Stars. The dance routines are really tight and really well choreographed. I think it's obvious that one of them can sing and one of them very much can't. And that's kind of the element, the elephant in the room throughout the whole production is that one of them can sing and the production is working very hard to mask the fact that the other one definitely cannot. And it fails. But no, the version of the roles in Cinderella, again, they've kind of done that with the fairy godparent, which Stefan Pejic is cast as. So it's not the fairy godmother, it's the fairy godparent. But there wasn't enough of him. He wasn't enough of an influence. When he was, it felt a bit of Deus Ex Machina. He comes in and saves Cinderella, where maybe it was more interesting if Cinderella could have got out of those grief and stuff. Oh no, the sisters have put Cinderella in a difficult position. How is she gonna get out of this? Up comes the fairy godparent and everything is okay, which was a bit kind of, oh, it would have been kind of nice to see her work out those scripts a bit more, if you know what I mean. But because Stefan Page has got background in magic, I thought they would have played on that a bit more illusion kind of thing. But they didn't, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity, and maybe that's something to do with the rigidity of the script. Maybe it's a script, if it's a script that is being used in several other locations, there are only certain changes that they can make to it, and they can't kind of pitch it to the strengths of people involved. It's almost like reverse engineering a pantomime, almost. Cinderella herself, it's interesting that I'm talking about her laugh. And I think it shows that maybe things happen to her rather than her making decisions about what she actually wants. No one ever asks her what you want in this pantomime, and I don't feel she has any agency really. Which begs the question, what kind of message is this sending to people, to young women, of like, things just happen to you and there's nothing you can do about it. I really wanted her to speak up for herself on several occasions with the prince, with the fairy godparent. But I didn't get that from her. And she has a lovely singing voice, Haley Gallivan, but I just felt she went in a pantomime called Cinderella. There wasn't much Cinderella, and I wanted to see more of her journey. It didn't seem to be about Cinderella. It felt like it was about everyone else, and Cinderella just happened to be there. There's some interesting things in this, but I feel a lot of missed opportunities. Although I want to talk about the set, or lack of. So what they did, and what they have done for us 3 years, they have these screens that they put at the back of the stage that they have the settings on, and that changes depending on the location. And it just feels really false and artificial and not kind of, I prefer kind of the more traditional made set. I know, like, the Torch have got a workshop where they make their own sets. But with these screens, it just almost doesn't feel like theatre. It almost feels like you're watching one of these, look like a gig in an arena show where they'll have different backdrops. And it just took me out of the show a little bit. It just took me out of the action in terms of what was going on. And yeah, lost a bit of attention there. So I would prefer them to go back to that kind of traditional set. But I imagine that they've probably done this as a way of saving money. What did you think, Callum?
Sounds like it. It's also like, when you're doing a script for lots of places, you can just send them the backgrounds and say, at this point in the script, you play this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
I guess my question is, did you enjoy it?
No.
Okay, cool.
I didn't. I thought I thought it was full of missed opportunity. And I thought I reflected on it. So I enjoyed it because of the people I was with, and I enjoyed the company of the people I was with more than the actual show. And I remember it because I enjoyed spending time with the people I was with. But yeah, I didn't think the show was up to match. And I thought it was full of missed
This is
opportunity.
why I have no friends and go and watch theatre by myself, because then I never have a good experience of other people. Great. By contrast,
Yeah.
unless you had anything
Let's
else to say.
let's compare it to the Cinderella that you
Okay,
saw.
so I saw Cinderella at Storyhouse, which was an in-house production, and it was absolutely fantastic. It is my favourite show of the year. I adored this show. Samantha O'Rourke wrote the script, and Hannah Noon directed. This is an amazing queer adaptation of Cinderella. And it is queer not just in form, so not just in like there is some queer characters in the narrative, but in its very form and function and like DNA of the way it's built up. So
Yeah.
the questions around agency and around the roles that people are meant to take are core to the very experience of the narrative. There are characters who are in roles that they then break from in really interesting ways.
So if we take as the given circumstance that Cinderella has no agency, how is that broken by this?
So, in this story, they give Cinderella a bit of a different personality. She is a gardener. That's like what her relationship, her dad was.
Okay,
They really
cool.
enjoyed gardening together. So that when her dad passed away after being married to the stepmother, like she kind of lives in the garden in a shed, and finds more company with mice than with actual people. But what's interesting is that the stepsisters, which are described as naughty stepsisters on the cast list, but I would argue aren't, only one of them is, are actually really nice to Cinderella. It's just the stepmom who like hates her guts and is like, "Why are you nice to her?" It's like, why wouldn't we be nice to her? It's a really like fun dynamic. But so Cinderella's story is that she doesn't want to go to the ball. She doesn't want to go and meet the prince, but she eventually goes anyway because the fairy's like, "But look, we can go and have all this fun," and then meets the prince. But they have no interest in engaging with the idea of meeting the future bride. Like, the prince doesn't want this. Cinderella doesn't want this. They just have conversations as people meeting each other. And then the fairy, seeing that they didn't... Like, the fairy doesn't want Cinderella to get forced into a relationship, sends them off out of the ball to actually spend time together.
That's good.
And get to know each other. So the whole thing comes from fairy has a certain role. She is there to tell the story of Cinderella, but this time she makes some changes. But also Cinderella can hear her. So like there's this bit where fairy's telling Cinderella's backstory, and then Cinderella's like, "I don't want to talk about that bit. We're not talking about that," and refuses to talk about her dad passing away.
So it's not as if the fairy is playing God and making Cinderella do what they want her to do. Cinderella's got agency in what she wants to be shown and what she doesn't.
Yeah, and Cinderella and the prince isn't a romantic relationship. Or it is, but like it is the start of a romantic relationship, not they get married at the end and live happily ever after. This was their first meeting. They're going to spend more time together.
Which I think is a really nice thing for children to see in terms of the dynamic of healthy relationships. Is that what it's
absolutely. The whole thing is about healthy relationships. And then you get Fairy, who breaks the order of the narrative, which means that more people see her. So she starts a relationship with Lena, one of the two stepsisters, and they have this moment where they meet each other, and then Fairy's like, "Did you see Lena? She's really cool." I was like, "What's going on? No, what? Wait, no, huh, I was in like panic stations because I was like, oh my god, the show's queer. Oh no, what? Oh, how are the audience going to take this? So I was on like, I was really nervous about the way
How
the audience would take it. There were no issues. So when the second time I saw it, because I saw it twice, because that's how much I like the show, it was like fine. I was just like enjoyed their relationship, and yeah. So Lena and Fairy, they become like a team. They team up and they are romantically interested in each other, explicitly. And there's like this moment where Fairy talks. So the Fairy is Fairy, the fairy godmother. Her name is Fairy. They're talking about the changes that have happened, and that normally Fairy isn't seen by anyone, and that she's invisible. And then Lena's like, that sounds really lonely. I'm really glad that you changed things so we could meet. I was in tears. I was gone.
Oh.
But because like the way that like Fairy operates as a queer, like feeling invisible in your queerness, is something that I relate with. I was like, oh my god, this play's broken me. Oh my god, this is genius.
But dealt with delicately and in a way that really spoke to you as well.
And it's just so full of heart. This whole production is full of heart. There were details that drove me mad, right? So there's a scene in the start where they're counting cabbages, and like there's this whole focus on Cinderella's garden, and it's not Cinderella, Cinderella's garden, and like all the things that are in it, and like there's this subplot with lemons that isn't really important. And like you're like, okay, what are they going to replace the pumpkin with? You'd think with the fact there was an entire scene of counting cabbages, it might be cabbages. No, it's potato. I'm like, just tidy up some of your connections and like your setups and delivery. Like there's a bit at the end where the prince is like, oh, you told me that your father really wanted to go to the Amazon and see all the exotic plants. Let's go to the Amazon together. That's never mentioned in the show before that point. And that's like a really simple thing that you could just fix. Like, you could just fix that really easily. But, like, this is, like, really minute details that don't affect the overall plot. And then you've got, like, there's the two mice friends. So the great thing about this as well is, Act 2... So at the end of Act 1 is Cinderella and the prince get sent off to the forest to spend time with each other. And the glass slipper is the prince's, not Cinderella's.
Okay. That's cool.
And they try and then everyone goes searching for them in the forest. And it accidentally almost becomes an adaptation of Midsummer's Night Dream. Or in the idea, like, they go into the forest and then lots of magical things happen and all these relationships get together. Like, there is some disco goblins who inexplicably appear. They're really funny. The whole bit of them being people who try to be West End performers who failed and they just got lost in the woods and became disco goblins is really funny. It would have been funnier if they sang West End songs, but they don't. It's a jukebox musical, and the jukebox, for the most part, was really fun. I really enjoyed it. Some of the changes, like, all the versions of the songs were good. Some of the uses was wild. Like, the villain's main song was I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight, which was like, this shouldn't work. This probably doesn't work, but you kind of engage with it. Everyone is doing an amazing job.
Good singers.
Absolutely amazing singers. Mally O'Donnell, who was Cinderella, is amazing. Susanna van der Burg as the wicked stepmother. I was having so much fun watching her. I didn't want to boo. Like, she's evil and terrible and great at being evil, but she's so much fun to watch. I was like, nah, like, go on, Queen. Is she
funny? Is she funny? Like,
the whole production is funny. And it's funny because it's funny and not because it's adult humour. There's like maybe one adult joke in the whole show. And the rest of it is just funny. I was having an absolute whale of a time. I loved this show.
I'm glad, like, on the last episode, you looked it up and you were like, yeah, good. I'm so glad you would see it. 'Cause it
Yeah,
sounds
so
like
have I. I
a
saw
great
it twice.
one.
Melinda Orengo. I'm doing the on cinema at the cinema thing of not being able to read people's names. I'm really annoyed about this now. No one else is gonna know what that reference is apart from me. As Fairy, heartbreaking,
Yeah.
amazing, loved her energy. Lewis Griffin as the prince is really entertaining. There's no Dame in this show, but there is a sequence where Lewis Griffin plays one of the glam squad, and that's a drag moment, and that's really fun. John Holt Roberts as the king is really entertaining. He's really lovable. Like, you can tell that he's like he cares for his son, but like his instincts are slightly off of trying to make this whole ball happen to find a bride, and he's like, but ultimately he loves his son, and that's the thing that's important. There's lots of really funny jokes about how the monarchy is bad.
How does that go down with a Chester audience?
So Chester loved this show, I feel, and I think like Chester's a really progressive place, and the Storyhouse have done some really progressive. They're a progressive space in terms of not just the theatre. They're a community space, and I love Storyhouse. If I could work at Storyhouse, please call me. I'd love it. Tasha Dowd as Mo the Mouse, but also Susan is really entertaining. Susan's like the planner for the ball. One of my favourite characters. Great. I also saw, the second time I saw it, Tasha is understudy for most of the roles, it seems. So she had to understudy the fairy. So her other characters were removed, and she played the fairy. Also a great fairy. Brought a different energy, but was still as emotionally engaging.
That's cool.
It was clear that the show was missing characters, and that it wasn't quite working. But you know, it's a last minute understudy. There's not much you can do.
No.
Jessica Joels and Sarah Workman as the stepsisters are great. Specifically, Sarah Workman as Lena. I connected so much with Fairy and Lena's relationship. I cannot express how beautiful it was, and how like like their queerness and the way that they're breaking the timeline and the way that things should be connects so explicitly with the queer experience and the way the narrative forms. It's a work of genius. Queer in form, not just narrative, is something that's so when you get it right, it adds so much to the experience. I'm never going to be able to say that name. Meg Nagachai, I think is not how you say it, but that's how I've read it. As the other mouse, Mim the mouse, is really entertaining. And when I saw the second version, they had to do the whole mouse sequence by themselves, which is like really difficult because it's clearly written for two characters.
How did they deal with that?
Well, it's just a difficult thing to do, and it's quite obvious that like it's not quite landing in terms of timing, but did a really great job. That is the only character that explicitly has a kiss on stage with one of the disco goblins. The mouse and the disco goblins one of the mouses and one of the disco goblins fall in love. It's this really great queer kiss in the middle of the stage. It's the only kiss on the show. It's great.
I like that.
Also, like, there were they/them characters in the show that I didn't notice because there are they/them performers in the cast. I didn't notice it the first time round. My friend pointed it out to me. I was like, oh my god, you're right. So like, I think that Min the mouse is a they/them, and that's and so is Meg, and like that was like seamless, and I didn't even notice it the first time round. And then also,
for you, I guess, is it like kind of normalizing that and like seeing it on
stage? It was so normalized, I didn't notice it, and it wasn't like they didn't have a 5-minute conversation about what a they/them pronoun is. It just was a natural part of the show, and I think there's place for that. Absolutely, there's place for that. But like, they just the show was just the show, and it was queer, and
That's
it
really
had
good.
queerness in it without spending time on
And
it.
it didn't have to explain or
It was just
look
natural as part of the whole show.
unapologetic.
Unapologetic, yeah. And then there's also
That's really
Robert Carfagoyle as the DJ. He also plays a detective that was a really funny little bit character. Everyone's doing a great job. Have I mentioned everyone? Yeah, I've mentioned everyone in the cast. Everyone's doing a great job, and they're all doing really good jobs, and I really enjoyed it. And the way that the narrative worked and the queerness involved, it's a very powerful, amazing piece of theatre that's really entertaining. I think sometimes it's a little bit too big for its possibilities. Like, the whole conclusion is a big magic fight. But the magic is sparks, and it's like maybe an emotional resolution might have been the better option here, because I don't know. And like, there's a bit where the stepmother blows up Cinderella's shed, but all that really happens is that one sparker goes off, and some of the plants get thrown on the floor. And it's like, I get it. You can't blow up your shed. You've got to do a million shows. But
if it had Disney money,
yeah. Well, not to criticize them on what they did, because there's some amazing production design. Yeah. It's mostly quite sparse, but there are like set pieces. So like the prince's bed, the forest has like these trees that hang down, and like sparkly magic trees. The prince's ball has a bunch of decorations with his face on it. It's really funny. The shed is a movable piece that comes out. The carriage was impressive, but only exists for like 5 minutes, and you're like, I don't know if I would have. I would have put I think I would have put the effort elsewhere, like the blowing up the shed.
Just going back to the Swansea Ground thing, the carriage was projected on. And like everyone knows, there's no carriage there, so it kills the moment immediately. It's like, just have a bit of attention to detail. You know what I mean? But it feels like the Storyhouse one, there was a lot of attention to detail there.
Yeah, I could have had more attention to detail. If I was reading that script, I would have gone, Sam, I love it. This is amazing. Let's tidy up some of these details. For my sake. Oh, no one else is. The kids aren't going to notice. The parents aren't going to care. But I'm going to care. I think there's a moment where... Because I think the stepmother's threat increases as the show goes along.
That's the way it should be.
Because, like, what she does is she... Like, there's a moment where the disco goblin who's fallen in love with Min is turned into a 1980s Cyberman. Well, yeah, that's the reference, and the voice joke is 1980s Cyberman. And like, yeah, uses the magic to take over the disco goblins, and you're like, oh, no, not disco goblin number 1, and 2. But what about Min and the disco goblin? There's like a really emotional richness in like, I don't know, queer love overcoming evil magic, maybe. That doesn't happen. They don't really do anything after they've become evil. They just kind of show up, and it's sad. But then Cinderella gets the wand and defeats the evil stepmother. I think, based on how the show handles its other characters, because pretty much everyone has an arc, and it works.
You don't get that very often in pantomimes or Christmas shows. That's really unusual.
It's so good. Like, the other stepsister, like, believes the stepmother's evil lies about Cinderella and, like, preys on her, like, insecurities, but then, like, realizes the mistake of her ways and changes back to being a good guy. It's, like, it's all solid. It's just that I think, like, I don't think... They do this bit where they examine the stepmother's backstory. And I'm like, maybe there's a way that you could emotionally pay this off and examine why she's doing the way things she's doing. And look at that. Obviously, some people are just evil. and that's fine too. I just think that like because the final climactic fight was a really good song and everyone was singing and like, but it was like the heart of what they're doing. I'm getting.
Yeah.
Do the effects work all the time? No. And like the timing of them is like slightly off. It's difficult. It's a very technical thing to get sparks right, and it's also super dangerous because the sparks are coming out of the stage where people could be. So you've got to make sure that everyone's safe before you hit them. But so good, I saw it twice. I loved this show. This is the best show I saw all year. Emotional, queer in like design. It was by the gays for the gays, despite also being for everyone else, and I emotionally engaged with it in such a deep way. I was crying more about the show after seeing it because I started to think about it and go, "Oh my god, this was so clever." And I felt like, because I was a little bit nervous the first time I watched it, because I was like, "Oh my god, they're doing this. What's the audience going to do?" Because like my internalized fear and homophobia was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna hate it. Someone's gonna boo. Someone in the audience is gonna go, I didn't pay for this. I'm gonna out," because they don't advertise it as such. Like the advertising of this show makes it look just like a normal Cinderella, but it is, and it this is like, I guess it is normal, but like the elements in it that I was like, I didn't know about going in, and that was such a pleasant surprise that afterwards it started hitting me emotionally because I was like, I was no longer on tenterhooks to see how the audience would react. I was just allowed to sit in it and enjoy what it had done. And then when a second time I saw it, I was just like, the whole time, like, I was crying from the first time Lena and Fairy meet, and I was like, woo, go for you, yeah.
And it was great that, like, I mean, firstly, you shouldn't have to base your enjoyment of something on what you think other people will think of it.
It was more of a fear of, like, someone being homophobic in the audience.
Yeah. I'm so glad that didn't happen. And it's just lovely to hear you have such a joyful experience with this piece. And I'm really glad that it really made an impact for you. Do you want to say anything more?
Next year I'll be there.
And is this a venue that you've been to quite a lot, or is it kind of newish?
I haven't really been to Storyhouse as much as I should, which I think I'm figuring out now. Storyhouse are a venue. They do make things as well. I saw 2 shows there last year. I saw Cinderella and I saw Faustus earlier in the year. And the quality of their productions is quite high. I also saw them the year before. I saw Time Traveler's Wife, the musical that was developed there, which was awful. It was so bad. Me and my friend who went to see it considered leaving during the interval, but that was also because we didn't know how we were getting home.
Oh goodness.
But fantastically, yeah, that show was. Are straight people okay? Because if you're liking this, I think there's something wrong with you lot. I need to use more. I need to use it more as a venue to go and see stuff. I think I've realised. You know, it much like it's like it is another Theatr Clwyd on my doorstep. Not to compare the two too closely, but they have similar ambitions. I'd say like Storyhouse is kind of trying to replicate some of the production house work that in like quality and quantity that Clwyd is. But if you look at Clwyd's new design for their building, a lot of it is things that you would see are positive about Storyhouse building, because the Storyhouse building is gorgeous. They're quite close to each other.
I've never seen anything there, but I was there when I spent the day in Chester. It's a beautiful building and a nice space to just spend time in as well if you're not seeing
Yeah.
the show. It seems like a good place to just go and hang out and have a coffee or read a book or stuff like that.
It's a bit expensive, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
um,
Can I talk about Beauty and the Beast at the Porthcawl?
I guess I'll let you. Just to say, Samantha O'Rourke, I can't wait to see what they do next year. They best bring her back, or else I'll be mad. Because Cinderella was great.
Well, I'd be interested to see if she gets anything down south next year, because I would like to see something that she's written based on what you said about Cinderella. So, high praise for Santa.
And Hannah Noon's direction is really good. I should just mention it's really solid. I've met Hannah. Hannah, we had I saw a show that Hannah was working on that I was also kind of part of on a different part of the production, and I wasn't a fan of the scripts. So my reaction was, "How did you think of the show?" "Oh, I thought it was rubbish," which is not great to say to a director when you first meet them. So I'm deeply sorry for ever saying that, but also Cinderella was great. Your direction was awesome. Now you can talk about whatever you're talking about.
You don't really care, do you?
I don't really care. I really don't. I do care about what you've got to say. I've talked about the show I wanted to talk about now.
Fine, I'll do this really quickly. So I went to see Beauty and the Beast at the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl. I went with my friends who do not work in theatre. And do you know when you go to the theatre with people who are not theatre people or people who don't go to the theatre very often?
No.
You kind of...
I don't go to the theatre with other people.
But I kind of wanted it to be good for them, so they might want to come to the theatre with me another time. Problem was, it wasn't very good at all. This was a messy and forgettable pantomime, which was at point actively bad. So we had a conversation last time about whether the pantomime is about storytelling, whether that's the most important thing. It definitely wasn't the most important thing in this show, because there was no plot, really. The comedy set pieces take up most of the first act, and they're between the dame character and the comic lead. And then we get like tiny little plot scenes, which are like, oh, and by the way, sort of thing, just to like give the impression that there's a hint of a story going on here. Yeah.
Right. Fascinating. Because the exact same thing happens at Theatr Clwyd. Theatr Clwyd's, I just went to see Sleeping Beauty, the Rock and Roll Panto, and it has the exact same problem where the plot doesn't exist. It just is set comedy pieces. It's just a variety show. It just feels like a variety show with like the bare minimum of a plot attached to it.
And you're like, just get on with it. Like, some of these set pieces are fine for like 2 or 3 minutes, but they go on for so long, you're just like, get on with it. Get on with it.
The comedy set pieces I saw at Theatr Clwyd were mad. There's an entire sequence where the dame is pulls on a member of the audience up on stage to talk about a date they had going to the cinema using film titles, but it's really explicit. Like it's really adult humor, and it's like about like, oh, we had like Naked Attraction, and then like they go on to talk about like how the dame got basically a sexually transmitted disease from it. Like it's kind of veiled, but not really. It's so explicit in what it's talking about. I was like, what's the point of this? It's so much adult humor, and I'm like, this is so weird.
I'm speaking about the Porthcawl pantomime. Most of that stuff would have gone over the heads of the children in the audience, and they're going to be bored watching long set pieces where there's no real end product.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's nothing that adds to the show story. Again, Cinderella sorry, Belle in Beauty and the Beast disappears for most of this production. It's not about Belle.
That's
It's
fascinating.
about
Because in Sleeping Beauty, the same thing happens, but at least there's a reason for that. She falls asleep.
yeah,
But the bit is,
yeah.
she doesn't even disappear because it's an acto muso show. She's on stage the whole time
Oh
playing
my
guitar.
God.
Like,
It's like, oh, is this show about Belle, or is this show about the Dame character and the comic lead given an excuse to just do whatever the fuck they wanted to?
honestly, I think that's it. Like, Cinderella at Storyhouse was an acto muso show, so the whole cast were performing
Yeah,
instruments. But they do a really good job of like trying most of the time. If two characters are singing, there are reasons why those two characters are singing the same song in their own
yeah,
worlds, and also like the whole vibe was just a lot more energetic. So like the weird fact that the evil stepmother was playing sax in the background didn't bother me. But like in this show, when the villains and Sleeping Beauty, who's meant to be in a coma right now, are playing the instruments live on stage, you're like, what? You're meant to be
yeah.
asleep,
Why?
love.
The pacing of Beauty and the Beast felt off throughout. It's always a bad sign when you get to the interval and you're like, where do they go from here? Because it feels like there's only 10 minutes of plot left. And I was probably right in that. There probably was only 10 minutes of plot left. But they managed to drag another hour out of it with bloody comedy sequences that are just there to fill time, in my opinion.
I guess
Um,
ultimately what it comes down to is what's the point of Panto?
Now we're having an existential conversation.
This is interesting to me because of things I can't talk about, but like it's the one time of the year that loads of people are coming in and out of your theatre. You are going to sell out so many of these shows. They are
Yeah,
expensive. People put lots of money into them. What do
yeah,
you want the audience to go away with? Is it a good evening of entertainment, or can you do something more with it? Which I think is what the Sherman's
yeah.
trying to do, and what Storyhouse successfully did.
Is But are they pantomimes?
I would argue that Cinderella at Storyhouse wasn't a pantomime, but it was. I can't tell. I can't tell if they were advertising it as Panto or not. I read lots of information
Okay.
about it. I was like going, are they saying Panto at any point? I can't really. And obviously, the Sherman are moving away from this kind of mixed show. Like the thing that made Christmas Carol, one of the many things that made Christmas Carol suck is the fact they didn't know if it was a panto or play.
Yeah,
Whereas like this year they were pretty firmly in the play with more Christmassy elements.
yeah.
But like I think you can do both. I think you can tell a story and do fun panto bits. It's just
Well,
about the balance.
another thing I want to say about Beauty and the Beast is that Alan Thomas Davis gives a really good performance as Beast. He's got really good singing voice, and he's kind of got nowhere to go because of the script. So the Beast goes from being feared to being sympathized with almost instantly, and that happens far too quickly. That should be a much more gradual thing. And I don't think Alan Thomas Davis can play scary because we don't get that very well in the early part of the play. He never feels like a threat. He shouldn't in the second half because there's that transition in there. But yeah, do you know what I mean? When I say he doesn't have very far to go.
Yeah. I mean like Sleeping Beauty had the only character who was driving the plot forward was the villain. That's the only. And there's an interesting inkling in the idea of the prince being the bad guy in disguise that has sparked a lot more interesting ideas than is actually explored in this play. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've got thoughts and ideas about how that works and how that could be interesting. It just wasn't interesting here.
No.
You know, what was interesting, you know, like the plot in the Sleeping Beauty at Theatr Clwyd was so wild. Like, at the interval, the dame and their child Buttons, who both work for the king, get fired because Sleeping Beauty's been cursed and put to sleep, and like the king blames them, and it's like, oh, okay, is the plot gonna start now? As soon as they come back from the interval, they're hired again.
Oh, way did it destroy all the tension? And
there was like very little tension, but at least there was like something that had changed. And anyway, and like, so also talking about like, so I watched Cinderella, which was like queer in form and practice, and was like happy about doing that. Buttons, who is played by a femme actor, femme actress, was like was the replacement for Prince Charming, because there was no Prince Charming in the Sleeping Beauty Panto.
Okay.
But it was a kiss of friendship. Like, oh, I love you like a friend. I'm like, just be brave and just do something with it. And also, the gall for that song to be
is that down to it being
Kate
a
Bush
bad...
is a queer icon. And like, if you're having Buttons sing a song by Kate Bush before she kisses her best friend, maybe just make it explicitly queer. I don't know. But like, you can't just quote Kate. Like, Stranger Things are the same thing. I get it. Stranger Things is also like, but like, and I get it. But like, she's iconic. Like, she's one of those people that are just connected to queerness, who may or may not be, you know? Like, it's like I could tell that Cinderella was queer because of the amount of Taylor Swift that was in it. Like, Taylor Swift isn't queer, but queer people love her. Right? Like these, like, it's iconography that I'm like, there's no way that Christian Patterson doesn't know this. And if he doesn't, what's he playing at?
Yeah.
I want a letter apology for Patterson.
Well, I'm
use of that song. I really was not impressed with the Clwyd Panto. I think that they really need to think about actually having a story rather than doing adult comedy bits that don't fit the show. I went to go and see a relaxed performance of that show. That did not feel relaxed in any way. But I've had conversations with Theatr Clwyd about that and what I felt about it, and like we had an open conversation about it. So I do want to say, like, they have acknowledged what went wrong. It's why I haven't spoken about it, you know. I think the cast are all having fun. It's just that, like, no one's character matters. Like, the fairies just exist. They don't really matter. Buttons and the dame are given more time than anyone else. You don't really find out anything about Sleeping Beauty, which is a big problem with that story that I've been thinking a lot about. The villain was an odd choice. Evil Eye, who was a German villain, simply because the joke was that Sleeping Beauty sounds like Sleeping Butty, or Butty when said in a German accent, which was like, I mean, I don't think you can be offensive to colonizers, but it's still not right. It still, like, wasn't funny or, like, interesting. Like, also, like, if your villain's like Evil AI, there's more you can do with that joke than there was done in the play.
Also that feels a bit like they're trying really hard to be contemporary,
but not doing anything with it.
No, exactly.
I think they need to. I remember talking to the director of the Panto at Clwyd a couple of years ago, like 4 years ago now. It would have been, or 5 years ago. No, it would have been like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And she said to me, it's really important that Panto's good because it could be someone's first experience of theatre.
Yes. Yes.
And it's something that stayed with me, and I can't remember the director's name. My apologies. But yeah, I was like, yeah, you're right. No, you know what? You are really right, because I kind of dismissed Panto, but you're absolutely right that it should be good.
Mm.
It should be good. And how do we make it good?
Yes.
Is a real big question I have. I will say, you know, like, Clwyd's Panto this year was in a big top circus tent, and there was spectacle. There was a massive castle at the back of the set. There was things that came up and down, a giant spider, but it was spectacle and no substance. And I just didn't work for me. I had lots of ideas afterwards. I have lots of ideas about how to write a panto. Now I've seen that.
That's good though that it's sparked that, but yeah.
Didn't work for me. And I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't have a bad experience on top of that because of sensory overload, which I don't normally get when going to see the theatre. And you know, I also had it a little bit with Peter Pan. There was it was no one's fault. I do not blame the kid. There's a kid sat behind me, directly behind me, who was like talking the whole time, and I just had to move. That's me, not the kid. The kid's perfectly fine to do that, and I think we should be able to do that. And like, there's lots of interesting things about accessibility of theatre and stuff like that. And I think the kids, but it's just for me, my sensory overload. I needed to move, so my form of access was having to move. That kid's form of access was being able to talk, and that's just, you know. And the way that those conflict sometimes is really interesting. And like, I'm now more interested in relaxed performances. I'm fascinated by them. After my bad experience, I kind of want to go and see what the standard is.
That's interesting.
Because I've got lots of thoughts about it. Because, like, you know, disability is something I'm really caring about, and accessibility is something I care about, and like something I think that I'm pretty interested in and good at talking about. So,
but then accessibility is an individual thing, and it's going to mean different things for everyone.
So how do we deal with the conflict of individuality and trying to create something that fits lots of people? It was really interesting. So
let me know what you discover with that, because I'd be really interested to hear your findings.
So it was rock and roll, but it wasn't very rock and roll. Like, all of all the songs, like all the versions of the songs are just really boring. Like, Cinderella had some fun with its versions of its songs, where I just felt like the Cinderella ones were really the Sleeping Beauty ones are just a bit boring. I didn't really feel anything.
Bit obvious.
Yeah, but also like, they just, apart from using Kate Bush in a straight context, which was like criminal in my account. Like, there was an AC/DC song that was just a bit like, it's not really connecting with me. Yeah, but you know, I think that they can do more with their panto, and should. That's my hot take about Clwyd.
Who's writing the one for next year?
Yeah, he's back.
Okay.
I might just send him a letter going, here's how you need to improve. I'm not joking. Here's the thing. The audience are engaging with it. They're enjoying it. They're loving it. That's what they're there for. But does that mean you should keep doing it? I don't think so.
Are they not all Tories, though? This is clear already.
Yeah, probably. Well, oldies and Tories and... Well, no. I think a lot of people in the area, you know, it's near Wrexham, there's a lot of... I think there's a diversity in their audience. I think they do play to what their expectation of the audience is. And what they expect from certain shows, where they could push the boat out a little bit more. I've got lots to say about their choice of Welsh language productions. I've got lots to say about it, and about how it's adaptations of English scripts and they're never good choices.
Okay.
Fleabag last year, this year, Constellations. Bad choices. You can get a writer to write an original Welsh play that does similar type things in a similar scale without having to adapt rubbish plays.
What's the co-pro that they're doing at the Torch in March?
Kill Thy Neighbour.
Is that going to be good, do you reckon? Or I don't know anything
The
about
other
it
show
really.
I've seen out of the writer, I didn't like
Okay.
quite a lot. So, so peek behind the curtain. I applied for assistant directing jobs on three of the. There were three productions. They were all looking for assistant directors. I applied for Rope and Constellations. Didn't get it.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't apply for
Ill.
Kill Thy Neighbor because I just didn't think I would. Because based on my previous experience of watching the writers work, I was like, it's just not going to work for me because if I
Okay.
think the script's
Yeah.
bad, I'm going to say it. Whereas like
Yeah.
Rope, I like as a script, and Constellations,
Yeah.
I've got problems with, but they're problems from a disabled perspective, and I think that like having that voice in the room is really valuable, which is why I applied for those jobs. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I only apply for jobs I think I'm going to be good at. Um,
That's good though. Yeah.
anyway, so you know, Theatr clearly got an interesting year coming up. Um, I'm interested to see how because the directors on the Panto were Dan Lloyd and Francesca Goodrich.
Goodrich. Yes.
I saw Francesca's play earlier in the year of Faustus, and I found some of the script changes to be bad, but overall the show was pretty high quality. I've worked with Dan over the last year, and I think Dan is a really enjoyable guy to work with, and I'm excited to see what he does with not my work.
Fran's prediction of Sorter by Richard Mylan at the Grand was one of my highlights of last year.
Yeah.
So I think she's a good up and coming director, but I'd just get really interested to see what she does with it.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah.
and I just think like talking about the Panto, back to back into Panto, like the direction, there's nothing to talk about. Whereas
Okay.
like with even with Peter Pan, the way that every character had a sense of being there on the stage, despite having no written arc, the direction was really solid in terms of like each character feeling unique and like they had their own existence. And like in Cinderella, Storyhouse, there's loads of little details of every character is responding to what is going on without taking away from anything, but it's just like a more lively stage. Whereas when I was watching the Clwyd Panto, it just felt a little bit dead. But I think that's more to do with the script than it is to do with direction. So let's talk about what we're going to go and see over the next month or so before the next episode. I'm off to see Yeah. Get press night tickets from Theatr Ken. Theatr Ken Leifel Cymru. I can't criticise this show because my best friend in the whole wide world is directing it, and so it'll be useful for Ciaran to see it as well, so we can have a critical eye on the show. I'm also in it, which is fun.
You're in it.
Yeah, I got interviewed for some of the fun. There's the way the show is set up is there's a performer doing the show, and then when they talk about certain topics, there are clips played from young people, and I am just young enough to count as a young person for the categorization they were doing. And
is it under 25?
it was under 25. Yeah.
Oh, I wish I was that young.
I won't be anymore.
Like
Like after this year, I won't be. But I was still technically young enough to do the show, to be interviewed about relationships and stuff. So I might be in the show unless they've edited it all out, which they might have because I said a lot.
So this show is an adaptation of a New Zealand kind of piece.
Yeah, I know a lot about the show. I know a lot about the show because I've been talking to Julia about it for months. So like, yeah, it is about relationships in lots of and it's about consent and sexual activity, both positive and negative.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of audience participation in the show as well, so I'm really excited to see it. and I think it's a really exciting piece to put on. It's interesting because so much of theatre in Wales, there's quite a big collection of theatre and education companies, or companies who do theatre and education shows, because this show is also doing schools and doing normal theatre locations, which is a really interesting mix. So I think it's fascinating to see if it connects with either audience and if it can do both. And what theatre can bring to this, and I think what they've been allowed to do because of their position is make a show about sex that maybe other theatre and education companies don't feel able to do. I know Clwyd have one, but yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see if it feels more of a TV show or kind of may have had an audience.
I think the form of it is sort of like a stand-up comedy gig.
That's cool.
Kinda, a little bit, some of it, which is because it's one performer's doing a lot of the work, and it's yeah. So we'll see. And there's also I think I don't know if they're going to do it on the tour, but the idea was that in the schools you could type things in on your phone and it would appear on the screen.
Okay. Oh, that's quite cool.
Was an idea I've heard. I don't know if it's done. Again, I know a lot about this show because I've talked to a lot of the people involved and know a lot of the people involved. So I'm really excited to see that.
The week after, then Sherman have got National Theatre Wales production.
In the arms of the angels. It's probably their last show.
Yeah, it probably is.
And what a way to go out, hopefully. Fell Monsters.
It seems like they are going out with a bang because I am quite excited about this.
I'm really excited to see a production about she-they characters written by she-they and, directed by she-they. I don't know, maybe there's an idea about having queer people who actually have experiences of the thing that they're doing, the story about, making the piece. It's a bold idea. I could be wrong.
That's really radical and dangerous.
It's a radical and dangerous idea that maybe
you're going to be locked up for having opinions like that.
I'm going to be locked up. I'm going to have people complain that I'm doing irreparable damage to people's mental health. Anyway, I'm excited for this show. A lot of really interesting people involved. It's a queer new musical with lots of great queer people involved.
Music by Nicola T. Chan, Lily Bro, Caracelleri, Garen Edward, Rebecca Hayes, Nathaniel Leacock, and Lynn Navalny in the cast.
Yeah, it's an exciting team. It's an exciting production team you've seen, and I don't know anything about it. So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
It's like the musical style of mashing up R&B, soul, pop, and rap, and it sounds kind of really musically. Yeah, that's really interesting take. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
We might not talk about it next episode because I won't see it until March when it comes up north.
Right. Yeah.
And Ciaran will see it early, or maybe we'll talk about it when Ciaran sees it and then talk about it when I see it. But
I will send you my thoughts after I've seen it.
The other thing that I would like to see, if I can figure out how to do it, I realised that I've bugged up the recording multiple times. You'll see a blank screen occasionally. I apologise. That's my fault. Meta versus life from Hijinks.
Can you explain the concept of it?
Could I explain the concept of the show? It's a really really difficult question. As far as I understand, it's a hybrid production, which is both online and in person, but both experiences are different.
Right.
Where in person you play as a ghost hunter, and online you play as a ghost, and it's
So
about working together to discover a mystery. So I think it's a bit like an escape room.
that's the vibe I got.
But it's an
This a
escape room with a
show?
cast of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people.
Right. I was going to say, is this a show, or is it an escape room, or is it a bit of both? And maybe that's something which we can discuss in the next. I don't know when I'm seeing it yet, but I really hope I can get to it. But it looks really interesting in terms of form.
Oh, interesting. The online version is like a full on. You create an avatar and there's a play experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I'm fascinated by this show. I would love to see it. I might see both versions if I can afford it. My plan is to go down to press night for, yeah. But in the afternoon, go and watch Metaverse's live. Yeah, I'm interested to see what's going on with it. I think, in my opinion, hijinks is at their best when they're making work that is just work and not work about disability.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think the people who make the show influence the way the show is formed anyway. So whatever, Meet Fred isn't explicitly about disability. It's about a puppet called Fred who lives in a world and he's a puppet. But it's one of the most emotionally engaging pieces of theatre I've ever seen.
I disagree. Meet Fred is a play about disability.
Not explicitly.
Or,
it is it is, but it's not the text. It's the subtext, but the text of the show. Right, what I'm saying is like Housemates is a show about these disabled people in this period of time. Whereas Meet Fred is a show that has that Fred is a stand-in for more than just an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an experience I really emotionally engaged with. I was crying and laughing the whole time I watched it. But
I really liked Meet Fred.
There's a reason it's toured about 1 billion times.
Yeah.
And then I saw their show at the big stadium. What's the stadium in Cardiff called? Principality.
The Principality, yeah.
But as I will always call it, the Millennium Stadium.
As everyone will always call it.
Yeah. And while that was not amazing, there was some really amazing stuff in its design, even if it didn't quite land. So I think that their work, I found, is really engaging no matter what they're doing. I think I'm really interested to see this show, and I'm excited for it. And
I hope I get an opportunity to see it as well.
What are the dates for it? It's the 26th of January to the 17th of February. So there's a couple. That's like 2 good weeks.
That's 2 weeks. It's on this Friday.
That's 3 weeks. That's 3. That's like 4 whole weeks of.
Oh, I got plenty of time.
You got plenty of time to go and see it.
I'll definitely see it. Yeah, but we'll talk about that on the next.
We should talk about that on the next episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it by the time you record next episode, you're not seeing it.
No. I will see it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of it for this episode. I've not really. It's been Christmas. No one's been working on anything. Well, actually, this was my work. I went to go and see some shows for work, and now I've just got to do the next step, which I can talk about hopefully in the future.
Cool. Yeah, I look forward to sharing that on a future episode. Hopefully, it's exciting.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening.
If you like,
if you like what we've done, please let us know. Again, we do this out of love for theatre, and we want to hopefully encourage conversation around the stuff that we make. And I think, today we may have been a little bit negative on some of the shows. I mean, I called one of them rubbish. So I just want to kind of reaffirm that, like, none of this is against the people who work on these shows. It's simply the result that we are like. And I think, you know, people are doing some talented work and everyone's doing a talented job whenever we see stuff. It's just the final product in its whole that we have to, like, examine and go, did this work for us or not?
And nothing is ever going to be perfect, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from my shows.
Apart from your work. And there's really lovely people in World Theatre, and yeah, we just wanted to say what we thought, and yeah, hopefully don't take it the wrong way is what I would
Don't take it the wrong
say.
way or else! No. Great. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know. We will try and upgrade the we will in a constant progress of making this podcast watchable and listenable. It's going to be a long process from getting from an episode where I have to edit out all my echoes to, oh, we got headphones this time and a video, but the video cuts out every now and again towards the end of the episode because Callum forgot to keep the windows on top. And also having a video format. Next will be improving mics. But this also is being done out of our back pocket. Like, none of this, we don't get paid for any of this. So,
No.
You know, any positive support morally will be great. And maybe in the future, if we keep doing this, maybe there'll be ways of supporting us otherwise. Or, if you're a theatre, just offer us free tickets.
Yeah, that goes a long way. Or if you're an oligarch or a prince who wants to run this podcast, that'd be cool.
I'm sorry, I can't. I can't morally bankrupt myself. You know, if someone's like, "We'll pay you, but you have to stop saying this," first thing I'll do on the first episode is say the thing I'm not meant to say. You know, I don't want to have to do advertisements for Raid Shadow Legends at the beginning of every episode. World of Tanks is my favourite game I've ever played. It's rubbish. Don't play it. And on that, it's time to go. Say bye, Ciaran.
Bye, Ciaran.
Bye, Callum.
We'll see you on the next episode, hopefully.
Bye forever.